contract that is longer than 20 years, and I seriously doubt, unless you're looking at a mortgage.
Guys, let's carry that on afterwards. We have some other people.
In the last couple minutes, I've heard us dance around this notion of product quality. I've heard solar's a commodity. I've heard module risk is incredibly important, and I've heard people talk about analyzing the health of the company. But I'm curious on the panel's perspective on what you would do in a project level to mitigate product quality risk. And just as quick context, I built systems using probably 10 different technologies and observed very wide discrepancies in product quality that can change the production of a system significantly, and obviously affects the profit.
You know, one of the things that I've observed in that very area, and I'm a little bit nervous about it, because this morning one of the people brought up Solyndra. I was hoping we wouldn't have to go through that ever again, but one of the problems is that in the US, the way solar systems are financed is that the money guys get out in 3 to 5 years. And I've had developers say to me, well, this panel is American made and it's far higher quality. I don't care, I'm doing the cheaper Japanese one, the cheaper Chinese one. In Germany, when you have a feed-in tariff, it's very complex. If you make electricity, they pay for it. If you don't make electricity, they don't pay for it. So the entire burden of getting the lowest LCOE, levelized cost of energy, is with the developer. And I feel a lot more secure. What I'm worried about is that down the road here, you know, Sanjay and I were talking about this, that all of a sudden we start having these mass failures of these Chinese panels in 5, 6 years from now, and everybody goes, oh my God, we told you, solar doesn't work. So I think it's a real concern.
Yes.
I'm just wondering about the value of data acquisition systems when it comes to giving the real-time production output, when it comes to financing and the quality of the product as well. As part of a Department of Energy project in New York City, right now, as we speak, there's data acquisition systems being distributed throughout the city on a variety of different types of installations through a variety of installers on a variety of different types of models that's going to be able to feed back to us the real-time production of these models. And we have them coming into what we're developing is something called the Intelligent Operations Center. So you have a snapshot of real-time production. You know, we're thinking how helps the utility knowing what's out there and what's being produced. But how does that help as a snapshot for the finance industry on being able to put a value, a real-time production value, matching it with the cost that you're getting?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the expertise of maybe a lot of people in this room is around, you know, something like technology reliability and kind of speaking to, if you had a lot of data on the reliability of the technology, would that kind of potentially enable cost of financing to come down? I guess I want to introduce like my view on that, which is not the technology reliability, but rather kind of the off-taker reliability. And in many cases, when I'm sure when you can look at the financing picture, a lot of what you're interested in is who's the off-taker, what's the quality of that off-taker. Right now, when people are kind of talking about this kind of securitization question, what they're very interested in is what are the default rates on kind of consumers paying for the solar leases, for example. And so what they're trying to build out is a data set that corresponds to the data set. You're talking about the technology side, but a data set that corresponds to the customer side, which is how often do consumers pay their leases? And how do the solar consumers compare to non-solar consumers in terms of FICO scores, for example? I know it's not kind of the question that you were getting at, but it's relevant to the financing question, which is if there was this body of data out there that kind of provided some evidence that there's some reliability of payments, then those are the types of factors that can kind of make some of these vehicles that I was talking about.
One piece of the puzzle.
There's just, yeah, various pieces of the puzzle, and each one, absolutely, and each of these data sets would help, and I think we alluded to it a little bit earlier, either kind of in some of this discussion, is kind of this need for historical data sets that show panel performance, show technology performance. What I was speaking about is something adjacent to that, which is data sets that basically kind of show off-taker reliability, when the off-taker you're talking about is you know, distributed consumer.
Yeah, I'd be interested in this panel's perspective on the morning session's references to cost. There was a goal of 50 cents a watt for 2030, a well-respected analyst from Green Tech Media presented in New York City recently showed 50 cents being hit by 2014. What are your perspectives on the cost evolution, and how much of the U.S. will be cheapest alternative by the end of the ITC in 2016 in your perspective?
Just one comment, then go for it. I was going to say, I mean, you heard some of my thoughts on this cost picture, on the kind of the total system costs. I will point out that when, there's so much excitement around kind of where module prices are right now. Heard as low on the Chinese side is 77 cents per watt. I don't kind of remember kind of where experience curve comes in 2014 or 2016. I will point out that no one on the manufacturing side is making money, except for the inverters. Basically negative margins all around, and you see that in the share prices of solar companies globally. I know some people know.
I agree. I think so just let's back into it for a second, right, as to where it can go. So poly prices is basically deflated, and it's artificial price right now because it's highly subsidized in China, right? And even the biggest company in China is selling, call it poly, at $22 a kilogram, and is not making money. That's not a viable long-term business model, right? So when you go from poly all the way to the module, then it's very difficult to see a scenario where they can be too much lower than 65 cents per watt on a fully loaded basis, right? And cash cost and not including depreciation, not including warranty and all that is a different issue, but it's very, very hard to see that, point one. And point two is, I think, even as an industry, right, in a way, I think we also need to sort of shift a little bit away from putting way too much emphasis on what is the module price, what is the module cost, what is the system cost. That's a bad metric to look at. I think what we need to be focusing on is how do I create volume in this market, which then will follow the liquidity, which then will follow the fact that the cost of capital and financing will go down. Because if you actually have, for example, right, as I was saying earlier, 100 basis point difference in cost of financing means so much for the clearing price of the system. And also going back to that LCOE point, which I think was an excellent point made earlier, right? Because if you actually can demonstrate to someone that 20 years down the road, you actually have a salvage value of the system. There's a residual value here. You factor that in, that also helps us impacting the clearing price for the system. So I personally don't think we actually need to get to the price point DOE has the vision for in terms of actually really being able to make solar a very big part of the generation portfolio in the US or on a global basis. I think as long as we get to that 10 cents a kilowatt hour kind of a delivered cost of electricity, I think we've got a very, very big market.
I tend to agree with that. Getting back to your issues with pricing, though, we've been focusing on the pricing of panels, and opening the one a little bit, I've actually gotten some panels at one point, one special project at 50 cents. All right, not going to happen again anytime soon, but that 50 cent price tag is not a dream anymore. That's going to happen. All right, I came from a world originally when I came out of school, it was manufacturing, and there is nothing simpler in the world than to manufacture a solar panel. It's a couple pieces of aluminum, a sheet of glass, and a couple sheets of silicon. There's nothing complex about it. It's the cost of materials. But what hasn't come down, though, is the price of inverters. Not to any great extent. Those things are almost exactly the same price today as I was paying from 3 or 4 years ago. Whether that's an effect of the market or effect of the technology, I don't have a clue. I'm just the end user. But with regard to what the prices are and what the cost contribution for direct project pricing, my issue is labor. And somebody was saying here was $26 an hour that we're paying in the U.S. I disagree. All right, prevailing wage in the U.S. or New York State is $53. All right, and that doesn't include a burden rate. There's an additional insurance, taxes, fees of 30% in New York State. So in essence, I'm paying over $65, $66 an hour to pay this guy to get on the roof. All right, and it is crazy expensive. If you want to talk about that reduced cost, that's where you need to focus. If you want to talk about reduced cost, it's about bringing down the cost of financing and ultimately bring down my overhead. That pile of paper, is really where it stands.
Just two questions. The figures, question, figures I'm citing seem helpful. finding a way to increase the productivity of labor is maybe more productive than trying to drive the labor down to lower cost. Perhaps a difference of view. But what I wanted to ask, though, is how do you, what would help? What I'm hearing here is that the genius of American finance is increasingly beginning to approach different ways of doing this, with probably no financial collapse for at least 3 to 4 years, so good. But what would be a public policy contribution, including staying out of the way, that would help accelerate this? I think the fundamental thing that Freddie was talking about here is that there's a huge opportunity to make things in America, to drive your